Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatvam Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatvam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Praptasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Baditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu ki Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringara Tanama Niramarjanado Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Chaturvedashi Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Triptan Hari Bhakta Shanga Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Shiradhikama Davayorapara Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Shiradhika Pratikshana Dhanalolupasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Nikunjayono Ratikelisidhai Jayali Bhir Joktir Apekshaniya Nikunjayono Jayali Bhir Tatrati daksha otivalabhasya Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Sakshadhari Dvena Shamasta Shashri Ruktastathava Vyataiva Sadhuvi. Kintu Prabhaja Priyaiva Tasya Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Kintu Prabhaja Priyaiva Tasya Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi. Dhyayam stubham tasya yasa trisandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Vande Gurashi Charanaro Vrindam. Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Patata Deshata Rine. Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Patata Deshata. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Chaitanya Chaitanya Nityananda Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Hariyaraye Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaye Namah Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe Jayo Jagana, Jayo Baladev, Jayo Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jayo Sitaram, 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 Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Shinga, Jayo Lakshmi Nara Shinga, Jayo Lakshmi Nara Shinga, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande. Jai Vishnupada Paramsa Prabhaka Charya Sutara Sarasi Shimad His Divine Grace Avacharvina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstapakachara Vaishnava Ceremony Padita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patiti Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जाए प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जाए जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जाए जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जना का प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्रीमन गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावरनाय अवतार की जाए गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जग की जाए जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जाए बृहत दांग ट्रांसलेट बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जाए श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप कृष्ण राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जाए श्री ब्रज भूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जाए देलो शिव श्री श्री राधा नीला माधव की जाए श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जाए परम करुण श्री श्री गौर निताय की जाए श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जाए श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर सिंहरे भगवान की जय जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्री मथुरा धारानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Lyric.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Bahirne Singare Dayene Singare
Narasim Hamarim Sharanam Prapade
Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade
Kavakara Kamalavari Naka Adhuta Shinga Kalika Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Avakara Kamalagare Naka Adbhuta Shinga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanavinga Kesavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev, Jaya Narasimhadev.
Jaya Nrsimhade Jaya Nrsimhade Jaya Nrsimhade Jaya Nrsimhade
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Neta Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Neta Gora Hari Bol,
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol
Srila Vigna Vinashana Shridev Bhagwan ki, Bhakti Shraman Prahlad Maharaj ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Yeah. Well done. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Tatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Shatavatai Namo Namaha Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Ki Jai.
Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Nama
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Heya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Heya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Heya Vilasi
Radha Krishna Seva Prabhu Heya Vilasi
Jitomara Sharanaloy Tada Vancha Purnahoy
Mara Sharanala Taravancha Puna
Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanabasi
Kripa Kori Karatare Vrindavanavasi
Moraye ya Vilas Vilas Kunjeri Avas Nayane Heri Bosara Jugala Ruparasi Eni Vedana Daro Sakiranu Koro Sevari Kara Diye Koro Nijadasi Dina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namora Hoy Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Basi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayena Basi Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahmatyati Kani Cha Tani tani pranashanti pradakshina pade pade. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani, Jaya Tusi Maharani. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda.
Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo.
तुलसी बाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्राणे देवी सतवंताय वृंदाय तुलसी बाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्राणे देवी सतवंताय वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्राणे देवी शतवताय नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की। O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha Krishna. I will take shelter of you as wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him in making resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold beautiful customs of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carried them as a branch. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me honored servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing the love of Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Ki Ito Darpanam Madhanam Nulamadavajivapanam Shreyakarivakindikaritaranam Yadujivanam Ananda Budivartanam Budipadam Tutamita Shvadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Jayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nam Akari Bhavuna Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitanyamitta Shmarane Nakala Vitadashi Tapatipa Bhavananti Dodhaiva Vidisham Vinadapi Sunichena Tarodapi Sanishkana Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. His praises of Father all the dust that can receive. And thanks to the Lord for his life. For his praise and praise to the Krishna. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It equals the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we always are anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And as you have hundreds, millions of names like Krishna and Govinda, in these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, think oneself the Lord and strong street. One should be more tolerant than the truth, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can change the name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causes to bless my service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I'm falling this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me in front of the Adams of your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly in a chain of holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs on my body stand on the hand to the separation of your name? O Govinda, feeling the separation, I know considering a moment feel like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so, even if some doesn't rapidly embrace, or makes me broken hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, but is always my worshipful Lord, unconditional. Shri 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 Krishna Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. That's when the body is dedicated life for Prabhupada too. Because the name of the demigods, the Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be able to are independent. When the Lord is free, it is where the orders the spiritual master for. Last time we got the glory to our Lord Jesus, the sons of the God fire. Because the glory is changing.
Hare Krishna is imagination. It gives some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. Show off.
It does so inoffense to give attention for chanting. Everybody who claims to be Vaishnava must go to guidance and offenses in order to greatly achieve the desired success. Krishna, Krishna. Now let us offer our song. This is from all the Vaishnavas, the devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires for one, and they are full of compassion for the followers of the sincere.
Shrimad Bhagavatam Dr. Raj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janma Yasya Yatum Viyat Itaratas Charteswa Vidyaswarat. Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyantiyat Surayaha. Tejo Varimudam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Sargo Misha. Damna Srina Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Parandi Mahi. O my Lord, Krishna, Son of Vasudeva. O all-pervading personality of God. I offer my respectful obeisance to you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations. And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma projita kaitravota, paramo nirmatsaranam sitam, vedyam vastavamatra vastu, Shivadanta Pavatrayon Mulanam, Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite, Kimva Pure Ishvaraha, Sadyo Hridi Aburidite Yatra, Krite Bhisusubhistakshana, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, By this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam sukhamukad amrita dravya samyuta pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavikaha. O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Yam Taksto Hiyabadrani Vidunati Suhitsitam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best wishing friend, and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nasta presu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobadayasche chete taranavidam stitvam sattve prasaditi. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnana mukta sangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis chidyante sarva samsaya siyante jasya karmani jasta evat manishware. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers a material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting a holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food. Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Nadiraj Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Chintamani Prakarasadma Sukalpa Vriksha Lakshavritesh Surabhira Vipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvananta Arvinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Visesha Sobham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vamsi Nam Gadam Pranayakeli Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shyamam Tribanga Lalitani Yataprakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Shakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaita Machuta Manadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabha Madurlabha Matma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagananda Kotim Yas Chaktirasti Jagananda Chayadyanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Baba Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha Suktar Yameva Nikama Pratitaistuvanti Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavitabis Tabirya eva nijarupataya kalabi. Goloka eva nivasata kilatma bhuto. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Premanjanacharita Bhakti Vilochanena. Santaksadeva Hidesu Vilokayanti. Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ramadi Murti Sukale Kalami Niyamena Tistan. Nana Avatara Makarud Bhuvanesu Kintu. Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramaha Pumam Yo. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasya Prabha Prabhuto Jagananda Koti. Koti Svasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam. Tad Brahmaniskalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Maya Hiyasya Jagananda Satani Sute. Traigunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Mana. Sattva Valambi Parasattvam Visuddha Sattvam. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu. Ya Praninam Patifulam Smaratam Bhupetya. Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayat. Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayat Yajasram. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya. Devi Mahesu Haridama Sutesu Tesu Tete Prabhavani Jaya. Tete Prabhavani Jaya Vihitascha Yena. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shrististati Pralaya Sadhana Saktireka. Jayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga. Ichana Rupam Apiyasya Chachesta Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga. Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasi Hetaho. Yasam Bhutam Apitatas Samupaitikariya. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Dipachar Eva Hitasantanam Abhyapetya. Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanu Dharma. Yastadrik Eva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga. Nidramananta Jagananda Saroma Kupaha. Adhara Shaktam Avalambya Param Swamurtim. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yasyaika Nisvasitakala Matavalambya. Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagananda Nataha. Vishnur Mahansahi Yasya Kalavicheso. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Vasman Yatasma Sakalesu Nijesu Tejaha. Swiyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra. Brahmaya Esa Jagananda Vidana Karta. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha. Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Rajaha. Vignam Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya. Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Agnir Mahi Gaganam Ambu Marudisascha. Kalas Tatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani. Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yatchaksuresa Savita Sakalagrahanam. Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Tejaha. Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Srutayastapamsi. Brahmadi Kita Patagava Dehasta Jivaha. Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yastrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahoswakarma. Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti. Karmani Nirdahati Kintuja Bhakti Bhajam. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Viti. Vatsadya Moha Guru Gora Vasevya Bhavahai. Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete. Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo. Druma Bhumish Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam. Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivamsi Priyasaki. Chid Anandam Jyoti Param Apitad Asvadyam Apicha. Sayatra Shiradi Bihi Shravati Surabi Bhyascha Sumahan. Nime Sardakya Vav Rajati Nahi Yatrapi Samaya. Bhajay Smita Dvipam Tamaham Iha Golakamitiyam. Dvitantaste Santakshiti Virachara Katipaye. Shri Upanishad ki jai. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Visishyate. Ishavaisham Midam Sarvam Jatkinja Jagatyam Jagat Tenatak Tenabun Jitaha Magritaha Krasasiddhanam. Kurvani Vahakarmani Jajiva Chekchatam Samaha Evam Tvayi Nanyatetusti Nakarma Lipite Nare. Asurya Namate Loka Andena Tamasavritaha Tamste Pritya Bhigachanti Yeke Chatmahano Janaha. Anajadekam Manasoja Vyo Naina Devam Apavam Pavam Asata Davato Nyana Teti Tista Tasminapamata Visvadadati. Tad ejati tan ejati tad dure tad vantike tad antarasik sarvasya tadu sarvasya syabhayataha. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmani vanupasyati sarvabhute suchatmanam tatuna vichigupsate. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmeva budvijanataha tatrako mahakaha sukha ekatvam anapasyataha. Sa prayagachukam avranam asnaviram sudam apapavidam kavir manisi paribu swayambhu yatatat rutam dadadas chasvatipyaha chamabhyaha yatatat yaturutam. Andam tamaha pravisanti ye vidyam upasate tato bhuyai vate tamo yayus vidyayam rataha. Anyade bhur vidyaya anyada vidyaya iti sushruma dhiranam yenastad vichachakshire. Vidyam cha yas yastad vedavayam saha vidyaya militam tritva vidyayam ritamasnate. Andham tamaha pravisanti ye sambhutim pasyate tato bhuyai vate tamo yayu sambhutam rataha. Anyadevahu sambhavad anyadahura sambhavad iti sushrumadiranam yenastad vichachakshire. Sambhutim cha vinasam cha yastad vedavayam saha vinasena militum tijva sambhutam ritamasnate. Hiranmayana patrena satyasyapi tambakam tatpam pusamapavrinu satyadharmaya dristaye. Pusanekasya yama suryo prajapatya vyuharasmin samahatejo yate rupam kalyanatamam tate pasyami yo savaso purushaha sahamasmi. Pusanekasya yama surya prajapatya vyuharasmin. Vayuranilamamritam atedam basmantam sariram om kratos smara kritam smara kratos smara kritam smara. Agnen om agnena supatara esman vishwani deva vayunani vidvan yo dajmas juhuranami no bhuyastam tenama uttim vidama om tatsad. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 19. Tubhyam chanarada Brisham Bhagavan Vividha Bhavena sadhu paritusta uvacha yogam Jnanam cha Bhagavatam atmasatva satatva dipam Yas Vasudeva Sarana Vidur Ajas Saiva. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and His transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in His incarnation of Hamsavatara. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are souls surrendered unto Lord Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The devotee and devotional service are two correlative terms. Unless one is inclined to be a devotee of the Lord, he cannot enter into the intricacies of devotional service. Lord Sri Krishna wanted to explain the Bhagavad Gita, which is the science of devotional service, unto Sri Arjuna, because Arjuna was not only his friend, but a great devotee as well. The whole process is that all living entities, being constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme Living Being, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, have proportionately minute independence of action also. So the preliminary qualification for entering into the devotional service of the Lord is that one become a willing cooperator And as such, one should voluntarily cooperate with persons who are already engaged in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. By cooperating with such persons, the prospective candidate will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service, and with the progress of such learning, one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. Such a purificatory process will establish the prospective candidate in firm faith and gradually elevate him to the stage of transcendental taste for such devotional service. Thus, he acquires a genuine attachment for the devotional service of the Lord, and his conviction carries him on to the point of ecstasy just prior to the stage of transcendental love. Such knowledge of devotional service may be divided into two sections, namely, preliminary knowledge of the nature of the devotional service, and the secondary knowledge of its execution. Bhagavatam is in relation with the personality of Godhead, his beauty, fame, opulence, dignity, attraction, and transcendental qualities, which attract one towards him for exchanges of love and affection. There is a natural affinity of the living entity for the loving service of the Lord. This affinity becomes artificially covered by the influence of material association. And Srimad Bhagavatam helps one very genuinely remove that artificial covering. Therefore, it is particularly mentioned herein that Srimad Bhagavatam acts like the lamp of transcendental knowledge. These two sections of transcendental knowledge in devotional service become revealed to a person who is a soul surrendered unto Vasudeva, or Krishna. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19, such a great soul, fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva, is very, very rare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsa Avatar. He was very much pleased with you due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you lucidly the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are souls surrendered unto the Lord Vasudeva, or Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So the Hamsavatara is what is considered one of the innumerable Leela avatars of Krishna. And there are specifically 25 mentioned in the Laghu Bhagavatamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami. This is also mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 20, chapter 20, verses 296 to 298. So in other words, there are infinite number of incarnations of the Lord. There are 22 special ones that are named in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the third chapter, first canto, third chapter. But besides this, there are 6 types of avatars. Avatars are persons who descend, or are personalities who descend from the spiritual world for a specific purpose. Some of those persons, because there's infinite number of liberated souls in the spiritual world, and there's obviously Krishna and his direct or plenary expansions like Balaram, and then the first Chaturvyuha, Sankar's son, Vasudeva, Sankar's son, Aniruddha and Pradyumna, and then Lord Narayana expands from that first Chaturvyuha, and then from Narayana the second Chaturvyuha expands of Vasudeva, Sankar's son, Aniruddha and Pradyumna, and from Sankar's son the Vishnu incarnations expand into the material world. Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. And from Kshirodakshaya Vishnu, all types of incarnations appear in the material world. And some of those are many of them are mentioned in the scriptures, and some of those are like secondary incarnations, like Hamsa Avatara. Okay. So, there are many important points made in this purport, and we'll try and go over them. First of all, devotional service implies devotee and God, or Krishna. You can't have a relationship with nobody. You have to have it with somebody, right? And devotional service is all about the relationship between the devotee and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when Prabhupada says that devotee and devotional service are two correlative terms, in other words, the devotee is someone who engages in devotional service for the Lord. So they're closely closely correlative or related to each other. And Prabhupada says, unless one is inclined to be a devotee of the Lord, he cannot enter into the intricacies of devotional service. That's because devotional service is not based on speculative knowledge. All of science in the material world is based on speculative knowledge. People speculate, and then they try and prove that their speculation is true. Sometimes they cheat also to prove it. Like one big cheater was Darwin. He never proved while he was living that his theory of origin of species was true. But he said, well, sometimes in the future they'll get all the evidence. It's sure to be there. I'm not living long enough to go through all the archaeological work that's necessary to find all the evidence, but it's there. Well, it's not there. And they've never really found all that evidence that he was talking about. But yet, they accepted his theory as science. Now, let's talk about what is science. Science is something that is true in all different spheres of existence. It's true in the past, it's true in the present, it's true in the future, it's true in all places. That is real science. So, the real science is science of Krishna, because he is everywhere present in the spiritual world and the material world. He never is affected by the three modes of material nature in the material world, or time, because time is an expansion of itself, and he's never in any way diminished. Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Adashate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnameva Vasishyate. The Ishopanishad defines the unique quality of God, that is, that he is perfect and complete, and everything that emanates from him is also perfect and complete. And although infinite unities of perfect and complete things are emanating from him, still he remains perfect and complete. So, therefore, he is, or the science of Krishna is real science. And all the other science that they talk about is basically junk, or gunk. Gunk is even worse than junk. You know. So, because it's based on speculation, and it's not, and whatever they find is not true in every frame of reference. It's always, it might be somewhat true in some special frame of reference, but not in all frames of reference. So it's not real science. It's theories. So theories are not completely scientific. If we accept the definition of science, by the way, look up the definition of science. Let's see what they say. I think they're not going to give a complete definition of it, I don't think. But let's see what they say. As we said, science means something that's true in all reference frames at all time, in the past, the present, and the future. And therefore it's predictable. And it is never fallacious. It never fails. It is absolute. It's absolute truth. What did they say? So there's a big difference between the definition I'm giving and the definition they're giving. Basically, underlying that definition there is speculation. How do we know that? So read that again. We hear it carefully. Okay, intellectual and practical activity. So intellectual. Now, right away, there's a problem there. Because every living entity has 4 fundamental faults. They make mistakes, they're easily illusioned, their senses are imperfect, and they have a cheating propensity. So their intellectualism will never be perfect. Right? Okay, go ahead. Encompassing, not encompassing, encompassing. That means that it includes as a whole. Okay, fine. They're observing. But again, there are 4 fundamental defects. They make mistakes. They're easily illusioned. Their senses are imperfect. Even if they use microscopes and telescopes, still they're observing. Their observation is going to be faulty always. And they have a cheating propensity. Go ahead. All of science has been checkered, or has been, let's say, proven to all of this speculative science has always been proven to be incomplete. Therefore, they keep coming up with new theories all the time. There are always new theories because they see the previous theory was not complete. Go ahead. Okay, that means that they don't accept the existence of the spiritual world. So right away, they're rejecting 3/4 of the reality of life. You see, they're trying to restrict their frame of reference, and they only want to deal with the physical world. But even then, their observations are imperfect and faulty. That's why they keep coming up with new theories. Is that true or not true? They're coming up with new theories all the time because the previous theory was not encompassing all knowledge. It was lacking something. So they have to come up with a new theory to try and cover that part that the previous theory doesn't cover. But they never come to an end of those new theories because they're not actually scientific. The only real science is the science of Krishna. It's completely inclusive of everything, material and spiritual. Their thing, they right away in the beginning, they exclude everything spiritual. Right? Because they don't want to deal with it, because they can't measure it. They only want to deal with things that they can measure. Right? And that is very limited, because they have limited sense. I mean, we all have limited senses. We make mistakes. We're easily illusioned. And we have a cheating propensity. Okay, so see, this is a very good example of the inadequacy of their understanding of science. Real science is true in all frames of reference and in all time, in the past, the present, and the future. And it's verifiable, and it's predictable. It's predictable. Just like Newton's laws, 3 laws of mechanics, it was predictable, but only in a specific frame of reference. And when they started seeing microscopic particles moving at the speed of light, they saw that Newton's theory doesn't cover that. So they came up with new theories, quantum mechanics and the string theory and this theory and that theory, and because therefore, but they're not dealing with real science. They're dealing with speculative guesses and presenting sketchy proof that what they're saying is true. Therefore, it remains theoretical, not real science. Okay. So, next point is that Prabhupada says, if a person is not inclined to be a devotee of the Lord, that person cannot enter into the intricacies of devotional service. Well, 99 plus percent of people in this world are not really interested in devotional service. They're interested in service. They're like, for example, you have people in India who are serving and outsourcing for America and Europe, right? So that's service, but that service is for making money, right? And then it's changing the whole life cycle in India. People before, they used to be mostly farmers, and they had a very nice life cycle. Taking breast early, waking up early, going regularly to the temple in the morning, and sometimes in the afternoon and the evening, and eating at the same time, and being very regulated in their life. And they had long lifetimes. They had many children, and the big Seminole family, and they lived in the same ancestral land for thousands of years. That whole thing is disrupted now, completely disrupted. Now many people in India stay up all night long to outsource for America and Europe. And then on the way home, they stop in a bar and drink, because of all the stress, to try and forget all that stress of talking to the crazy Americans. And then this thing and that thing. So you see, the whole lifestyle and cycle that maintained India for hundreds and millions of years has been disrupted. And that's a very serious thing, because it disrupts the practice of Sanatana Dharma also. What does Prabhupada do when you join Krishna consciousness? He first of all teaches us to be regulated. Regulated in what? Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Because these are material, so-called necessities of the body, not of the soul, but of the body. So as long as we have this body and we sort of identify with it, this is my body, we are covered by a veil of Maya, and to break that veil of Maya, or to dissipate it, we need to be regulated in hearing and chanting about Krishna and serving. Otherwise, we can't get out of this veil, this shroud of darkness in us. So, one interesting point here is that there's a verse from, I think it's Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, yes, which is all about the science of devotional service. See, now, you can correctly use the word science when you're talking about Rupa Goswami's science of devotional service. It's true, it has been true in all times, in all frames of reference, in the past, the present, the future, and it's predictable. It's predictable, and because of that, people in Africa became devotees. People in Australia became devotees. People in Russia become devotees. People in Mongolia become devotees. People in Europe become devotees. People in the United States and South America and Canada become devotees. People become devotees on the North Pole and the South Pole, because it's predictable and it's true in all times and all places. They become devotees in the lower planets, even in hell, and they become devotees in the higher planets, even going up to Brahmaloka. So it's true in everywhere in the material world and the spiritual world. And it includes the material world and the spiritual world. This is real science. Prabhupada uses this word over and over again, the science of Krishna. Don't belittle the import of that word that he's using. This is the only science. The junk science that they teach today is full of faults and always being corrected and newly theorized and this thing and that thing, and only true in this very restricted framework and partially predictable and sometimes unpredictable. So this is explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or the Nectar of Devotion as the science. And it says, Ado Shraddha Tata Sadhu Sango Ta Bhajana Kriya Tato Narta Nivriti Syat tato nista ruchis tata. Atasaktis tato bhavas tata prema nanchati sada kanam ayam premna pradur bhave bhavet krama. In the beginning, one must have a preliminary desire for self-realization. This is called adho shraddha. This will bring one to the stage of trying to associate with persons who are spiritually elevated. This is called sadhu sango. In the next stage, one becomes initiated by an elevated spiritual master. This is called bhajana kriya. And under his instruction, a neophyte devotee begins the process of devotional service. This is called anartha nivriti, which means by execution of devotional service under the guidance of the spiritual master, one becomes free from all material attachment. Okay. Next stage, one attains steadiness, that is nishtha, in self-realization, and acquires a taste for hearing, ruchi, about the absolute personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. This taste leads one further forward to attachment for Krishna consciousness, atashaktis, which is matured in bhava, which is the next stage after atashaktis, or the preliminary stage of transcendental love of God. Real love of God is called prema, the highest perfectional stage of life. In the prema stage, there is constant engagement in the transcendental loving service to the Lord. So, by the slow process of devotional service under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can attain the highest stage, being freed from all material attachment, from the fearfulness of one's individual spiritual personality, and from the frustrations that result in void philosophy. Then one can ultimately attain to the abode of the Supreme Lord. This is science. This is real science. Right? The Nectar of Devotion is a scientific book of the progressive purification of a soul entrapped in the material world, and how that soul is liberated and goes back to Godhead. It includes the material world and the spiritual world. It's not exclusive of the. It doesn't exclude the spiritual world. Everything is included. This is real science. What they're teaching us science in the school is junk. It gives you a very, very limited understanding of reality, and because of that, everybody is a failure. At the moment of death, they don't remember God. They remember their 401k, or some lover that they had, or some insect, or I don't know what, but not Krishna. And therefore they take birth again and stay trapped in the cycle of birth and death. So that is not science. That is junk, or even worse than junk. It is gunk, because it leads to perpetual imprisonment in the shroud, this darkness of lust, anger, greed, madness, illusion, and envy. So, besides this, then Prabhupada says, the whole process is that all living entities, being constitutionally parts and parcels of the Supreme Living Being, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, have proportionately minute independence of action also. So, yeah, our minute independence is restricted to two choices. Either I follow Krishna or I don't follow Krishna. That's it. There's no other, let's say, latitude is given to this spirit soul, to you and me. We have only these two choices in life. Either I'm going to follow Krishna's instruction or I'm not going to follow. Therefore, Prabhupada says, so the preliminary qualification for entering into the devotional service of the Lord is that one become a willing cooperator. And as such, one should voluntarily cooperate with persons who are already engaged in the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. Now, this is fundamental. Because it begins with a preliminary desire for self-realization. And then it advances to sadhu sangha, associating with saintly people who are engaged in devotional service. And what happens in their association? One begins to engage in devotional service, and one learns about the existence of a bona fide spiritual master and spiritual masters, Shiksha and Diksha gurus. And in that association, one develops the strong desire to be initiated formally and to take up formal engagement in devotional service, not occasional or casual engagement in devotional service. Formal. In other words, you have to do it. Right? That's what initiation is. You must do this. You must chant your rounds. You must give up meat eating, and gambling, and speculation, and illicit sex, and intoxication. And you must hear every day Srimad Bhagavatam, and you must chant your rounds, minimum 16 good rounds every day, and you must eat only prasadam, and you must come to the temple regularly and perform devotional service. This is all scientific, and the results are predictable. You become purified. You lose the desire to exploit material nature for our selfish interests, which are eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Therefore, you will see that there are many gadgets to help people eat, sleep, mate, and defend. Many, many gadgets being manufactured in China, Taiwan, and Europe, everywhere in the United States, for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But are they selling any products to help you go back to Godhead? No. Are they producing their factories great innovations on how to go back to Godhead? No. They're trying to send you to Mars or the moon or under the ocean or some, but they're not trying to send you back to Godhead. They're not interested. Do you hear Elon Musk talking about, I'm going to make a rocket that'll take you back to Godhead? No. He wants to take you to Mars where you die. This is all nonsense. It's all crazy stuff. It's loony-toony stuff. This is for idiots. It's not for smart people. So now Elon Musk, what did he do? He sold all his big mansions in California, and he's living in the desert somewhere in Texas in a 20 by 10 tiny house. Did you know this? You know that? You heard about it? Yeah. He's living in a tiny house, living as a minimalist. He's practicing what it'll be like to live on Mars when he goes there. He's crazy. He's absolutely nuts. Yeah, even crazy people can be rich. Like, for example, Ravana was the richest guy at one time. And, he was much richer than Bezos. And he was very scientific also. He knew how to build a tunnel right through the earth to Lanka to mine gold and precious metals and bring them back and build his city of Lanka. So he was a scientist. He was a Brahmana, at least half Brahmana, and he was a high-tech guy. He had more tech than anybody has today. And he was, he's a scientist. He was a scientist, right? But a phony scientist like the ones today. But much more evolved than them, right? So, and he was very rich. He had all the wealth. He conquered the whole material universe, except maybe Brahmaloka, but he conquered all the other planets. And he had a Vimana, that is a Pushpaka Vimana. They could go anywhere in the universe, almost. And it was enough to carry a whole city, a gigantic city. It wasn't like a Boeing 747. It's much bigger than that. See? So he was scientific and everything, but he was a nonsense. And he was defeated by Lord Rama. So, therefore, we see that all these guys, all the little Ravanas and Hiranyakashipus and all these little demons, they're all going to be defeated. And look at this crazy guy. He's living in a 10 by 20 tiny house made out of plastic and artificial ingredients in a deserted area of Texas. You see how crazy they are? But anyway, people think, oh no, he's a very smart guy. He really knows what he's doing. So here Prabhupada says that you have to become a willing cooperator to enter into devotional service with people who are practicing devotional service. So that's sadhu sangha. And with people who are already engaged in transcendental devotional service. By cooperating with such persons, the prospective candidate will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service. In other words, this is a slow process. It's not overnight. It takes time. Right? Anything good takes time. And will gradually learn the techniques of devotional service, and with the progress of such learning, one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. What do we do when we send our kids to these schools? We send them into the bastion of material association, where they're learning all kinds of junk, which is actually gunk. All types of speculative so-called science and so-called theories, and they're supposed to read the great philosophers, which are all speculators and nonsense people, like Nietzsche and Sartre and Camus and Hobbes and this one and that one. By the way, the English philosophers are the dumbest of all of them. Right? The Germans are a little bit smarter than them, but not much. But the English philosophers are the dumbest, the worst in the world. And then you have the Greek philosophers. The Greek philosophers also all speculation. Even though they were much closer than anybody else to Vedic culture, but it was mostly all speculation. So your kids are being forced to read all this nonsense and get their heads filled with gunk, and they can't figure out anything. When you read a book of the great philosophers, you have to read a book about 20 or 30 philosophers. You don't understand anything after you read. You understood more before you read the book than after. Yeah. So one becomes proportionately free from the contamination of material association. So all these schools are the citadels of material association. Then such a purificatory process will establish the prospective candidate in firm faith and gradually elevate him to the stage of transcendental taste for such devotional service. So that's called ruchi. By being trained by a bona fide spiritual master and spiritual masters, one eventually develops this taste for devotional service. And what is devotional service? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevinam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. This is spiritual life, and it's based on beginning with hearing and chanting, which are the most important things. Instead of hearing lectures by this professor and that professor, one is about biology, the other one is about science, the other one is about mathematics, the other one is about social science and history and psychology. All nonsense, all a waste of time, because it's all speculation, and it's all a material veil of ignorance and material association. It's unnecessary. It's not necessary to be successful. It is necessary to be a failure in life. They're training your kids to be failures, to spend the rest of their life working to make guys like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk rich. And these two guys are crazy. They're both crazy people. So, thus, he, the candidate, acquires a genuine attachment for devotional service to the Lord. So you get a genuine disattachment by going through the material education. And you think, well, the devotional service, well, maybe I'll do some when I get to be like 60 or 70. Who knows if they're going to live that long, right? They think, no, this is much more important. I got to make Elon Musk rich, man. I got to make Jeff Bezos rich, and I got to make Larry Ellison rich. You know, they're multimillionaires. You know, and I got to increase their billions, and I'll get some peanuts from them, right? I'll end up with maybe $1 million or $5 million, and I'll be successful also. You know, no, it's not success. You wasted your time. The real success is thinking about Krishna and serving Krishna and going back to Godhead. That's real success. It's not making Elon Musk rich. That's not the goal of life. You know. Such knowledge, thus he acquires a genuine attachment for devotional service to the Lord, and his conviction carries him on to the point of ecstasy, just prior to the stage of transcendental love. This is success. When you become ecstatic all the time and nothing affects you because you're completely immersed in love for Krishna, and you attain this transcendental love for the Lord, and you go back to God. Lord Chaitanya acted like a crazy man, because for people, someone to love God so much that they give up eating and sleeping and tasting always the nectarian verses of the Bhagavatam, glorifying the Lord. This is a waste of time for them. This is, hey man, I could be having sex. I could be going to the gym and working out and building up my abs. And I can be getting a massage, and I can go to Cancun and Mazatlan and have a great time. You know, this is a waste of time. You know, love of God. I don't want to love God. I want to love these beautiful women or these beautiful men. You see. You see how crazy people have become. Here's the most desirable thing, and they say, I don't want to go anywhere near that nonsense. This is nonsense for them. And you let your kids associate with people like that? My God, I would never associate with those people anymore. I also did before, but it was a mistake. But no one told me it was a mistake. I thought it was real. Until I met Srila Prabhupada. So, such knowledge of devotional service may be divided in two sections, namely preliminary knowledge of the nature of devotional service and the secondary knowledge of its execution. So that is Sambandha and Abhideya. And then through that, one attains Premanjana, pure love for God. There is a natural affinity of the living entity for the loving service of the Lord. That means that's our real nature. This affinity becomes artificially covered by the influence of material association. See? Material association. You know, that is exactly what modern education is. It's all material association. And Srimad Bhagavatam helps one to genuinely remove the artificial covering of this material association. Material association is the most dangerous thing for a person. The most dangerous, because you get infected with the real virus. It's called love of sense gratification, not love of God. Love of self-indulgence and sense gratification, of egotism and attachment to eating, sleeping, and mating and defending. This is dangerous. It's a formula for failure as a human being. Failure in the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to go back to God. It is not to stay in the material world, life after life, through the 8,400,000 species of life, taking birth as an aquatic, and then as a reptile, and an insect, and a bird, and a plant, and a mammal, and finally coming into human species. And most of the human species are uncivilized anyway, because they're not regulated in spiritual life. So it's very rare that a person becomes a devotee of the Lord. Very rare, because most people are not going to be interested in it. And then, therefore, it is particularly mentioned herein that Srimad Bhagavatam acts like the lamp of transcendental knowledge. These two sections of transcendental knowledge in devotional service, that means preliminary knowledge and then knowledge of how to engage in devotional service, become revealed to a person who is a soul surrendered to Vasudeva, meaning Krishna. As it is said in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Bahunam Janmanamante Gyanavamam Prapadyante Vasudeva Savamiti Samahatma Sudurlabhaha. Such a person, or a great soul, fully surrendered unto the lotus feet of Vasudeva or Krishna, is very, very rare. Yeah, so there are 7 billion people in the world, and how many devotees are sitting here right now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's why it says very, very rare. See, even in our community, it's very, very rare. Right? Hari Bol. So we'll stop right there. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Are there any questions? Since there is deep silence, we will end the class. No questions, no answers also. So we'll end the class. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Visitarne. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhu Mui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Oya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chittete Koriya Kya
Mukha Padma Vaikya Chittete Koriya Kya
Arana Koriya Mane Hasa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa Chaksudan dilaje janme janme Prabhu se
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 Divye Gyan Hriday Prakashito
Divye Gyan Hriday Prakashito
Prema bhakti jaha hoite avidya vinasajate.
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 Vedega janara charito.
Vedega jahara charito.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu.
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu. Lokena Lokera Jivana. Lokera Jivana. Lokena Lokera Jivana. Lokena Lokera Jivana. Ha ha Prabhu Pura Doya Deha More Padachaya. Prabhu Pura Daya Deha More Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Pura Doya Deha More Padachaya. Prabhu Pura Daya Deha More Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Pura Doya Deha More Padachaya. Ha Prabhu Pura Daya Deha More Padachaya. Ebeas Kusaki Bhuvana. Ebeas Kusaki Bhuvana. Ebeas Kusaki Bhuvana. Ebeas Kusaki Bhuvana. Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskadya Desatarine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskadya Desatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Krishna
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Pararajikachara Statara Satara Shri Shimadi's Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Thakur Haridas Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Shakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gauda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desitarnai, Gaura Premanandi Haribom. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to this lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the Lord. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the lotion of mercy, the friend of the poor and the Lord and master of devotees. Oh, Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Smati Bhakti Nasmati. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Chari Visesha Sunyavadi Paskati. Haribo, Haribo. Sound like Haribo, doesn't it? Oh no, it changed now. Haribol.